let's get into it. So Utah Jazz training camp, like I said, for us starts tomorrow. We had media day today.
I've had October 3rd circled on my calendar for how long now? I've been going crazy.
Yes.
Part of it's because we have so many questions about just roster, who's going to get playing time, are there going to be trades right before?
Right. And I don't know. I'm curious to see. We didn't get to see Bryce Sensabaugh. We didn't get to see Taylor Hendricks at all in Summer League. I want to see what they can do at the NBA level. I want to see what they can do when they get pushed. I don't know if you, in the media, Taylor Hendricks talked about Colin Sexton has been like pushing him. They've been on the team, and Colin Sexton's been kind of riding him, trying to get him ready.
Because you know that Colin Sexton's going to be the most insanely intense person, even if they're doing a layup drill.
Yeah.
Like every time I go in these kind of different patterns of I won't see Sexton for a while because it's the off season or whatever, and I'll be like, I don't know if he's going to be in there, and then I'll see an interview with him, and he's just burning through the camera with his laser eyes. The intensity, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's going to start. Dude, I don't know for sure, but his intensity is through the roof.
Yes.
I loved also Chris Dunn in media today. In his interview, he talked about each one of the rookies. One of the journalists asked him to, and he said, he's really impressed with, Keontae's, he didn't say flair, but basically that, his ability to get out there and score and do things, and knows that he can help him with his defense, which is one thing we saw for sure.
Keontae actually talked about that too.
In Summer League. He
touched on that as well.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
And that's okay. What he did in Summer League was some really good signs. He also Chris Dunn also mentioned with Taylor Hendricks that he calls him a hard hat. Basically, he's not going to do a lot of talking. He's just going to put his hard hat on. He's going to go to work.
That's fair.
And I mean, I watched a ton of Taylor Hendricks this season. I was begging for the Utah Jazz to draft him, and you're my witness to this. I mean, first month of the college basketball season.
Right.
I was. This is a Jazz man. This guy will fit.
Well, that was the amount of times where they're playing him at the 5, but me, you, my dad talked about him at the 4 with Markkanen and Kessler would be perfect.
Yeah, and that I mean I still believe that he's his game fits the modern style of the NBA. He's a 3-and-D guy. His D sometimes he gets a little bit upright, a little bit naive kind of, but his athleticism and his movement and his shooting stroke, money.
Yeah,
money. And then he talked about also Bryce Sensabaugh, just about how smooth he was and how he can score in just all different ways. And Bryce Sensabaugh is kind of the we'll see guy out of the draft. You know my feelings on it. I may have swore at the TV when they announced his name on the draft.
Sean wasn't too thrilled with that.
No, prove me wrong, brother. I love it. If you prove me wrong, it'd be awesome. But I had my eyes set on a couple other guys that I thought were better fits. There's no question that Sensabaugh early in the college season when he was healthy was an offensive force and had some impressive abilities, an NBA-ready jumper at that point. Anyways, that's just kind of confessing and getting my feelings out there early. But I did yell at the TV on draft.
Yes. So we can't talk about media day without talking about John Collins. Brand new to the team, very clear, wants to go into Atlanta and kill Atlanta.
Can't wait, dude.
There is no question.
Do we know the dates on if they come here for us? We go. I don't know. We have to look at the.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Look at the schedule and see when that is. But I loved it. He knows. The journalist, for those of you who didn't see on media day, asked him, "So, do you have the date circled for the game against the Hawks, or is it kind of more?" And he jumped right in and says, "It's circled."
It's circled. Talked about the difference in Utah on not having any egos in training camp and with the team, and guys just wanting to get their job done.
I'm excited. The conviction in his voice. I mean,
and for you guys. We've been talking about John Collins on the Jazz for 3 years, 4 years?
For as long as he's been rumored to be being traded, which has been every year since he signed his big contract.
Yeah.
It seems like as soon as he signed the big contract, the talk immediately started.
Even before that. Like, he was young, and me and my dad were talking about, like, dude, this guy would be such a good fit next to Rudy Gobert.
Right. That's true. It was.
And now he's, I think, going to be a perfect fit next to Walker Kessler and Markkanen. He gives us the size to be able to play Markkanen at the 3, as well as the athleticism to not feel like we're just playing 2 5s.
We know that from early in his career that he is a very efficient role man
Yes.
and the speed and energy in which he makes his cuts across the court. And Atlanta hardly ever used him on this. Fits perfectly into what Will Hardy does.
Dude, him in the open court, him, Markkanen, Sexton, Agbaji, all in the open court is.
Yeah, we also didn't have a track team. That's true. That's pretty exciting. And the thing in watching John Collins too is, I didn't realize this before, but he has a pretty good post game, like back to basket, and
Yes.
he'll face up better than I thought. As I went back through and watched,
They played him as a small ball 5 quite a bit because of his ability to be a roller, but also be able to play down low.
Yeah, he's better than I realized he was. He can really take advantage of some mismatches there. I didn't realize this as well, but I mean, he had a rough start to this. His start was okay. The middle of the season, when he messed up his finger last season, was really rough. And then towards the end of the season, he finished off in the last, I believe it's 2 months of the season, shooting like 38 or 39%,
right,
from three. And as they got into the playoffs, so Atlanta won the play-in game, and they faced off against the Celtics.
Yeah.
So that was their first round. Celtics went up a couple of games, and I watched games 5 and 6, and John Collins was money in those games.
I thought we weren't going to be able to trade for him at that point.
Yeah. He's playing too well. And even though, the heavy head down, maybe not head down because he has a ton of assists, but the ball pounding Trae Young on the team and their style that they jumped into made it really tough for him to get a flow. And there was a time where he'd hit 2-3 shots in a row and then wouldn't see the ball again for a good chunk of time.
Right.
Really frustrating. In a lot of that game 5, and especially in game 6, even though he was putting pressure on the Celtics in the post and at the 3, on the defensive side, a lot of times he was guarding Jaylen Brown.
Right.
Which,
like, straight up shooting guard.
Yeah, and I mean, Jaylen Brown was really good that series. He put up a ton of points.
Yeah.
But you can see just the understanding of his versatility, and especially when he has an increased amount of gravity, when he's hitting his shots, man, and his athleticism, I'm excited.
Well, and that's the thing is, if he can get back to shooting 38%, 39% from 3, in the corner, you're not going to be able to leave him, and then opens the lane for Markkanen. Even some of our guards, Keontae, Sexton, Clarkson, who are really good at getting to the rim. And then as that starts happening, his ability to slash.
The way that he can make his cuts, and you know how we would run the screen action for Markkanen out on the wing, where he'd come across kind of a double screen and cut into the lane, and we'd hit him right there. The amount of backside actions that you can do off that with cuts and stuff, and I mean lobs or to the corner, Will Hardy's going to be able to feast on that.
Right.
And I love that Will Hardy talked about also the sorry, got a little eye leaker here. Talking about John Collins playing with Olynyk and with Markkanen, or even you throw in Taylor Hendricks in there too, or whatever the matchups are, and the level of versatility. And we now have also defensive players. I'm just excited, man. I don't think I've ever been this excited for preseason NBA basketball.
Just to see who's on the court, who's going to be playing together, everything.
Yeah.
With that, let's go into preseason. What do we think? Like day one lineup, what do we think is going to happen? First game preseason. Who starts? Because that's the big question. We have 6 guards.
So you're talking this Sunday.
This Sunday.
What's the starting lineup this Sunday against the Clippers in the preseason game?
Yes.
I think we know the 3, 4, and 5. We know that is.
That's yes. Should be Markkanen, Collins, Kessler.
Yeah, should be. So everybody's wondering about the 1 and 2. It makes some sense for size and defensive-minded situation to have Clarkson and Ochai Agbaji in there together.
And that's where, dude, I think, and you read too much into these things on media day, but I think the way Hardy and Zanuck talked about the guard lineup and the competition there, and then there's 5 guys who are really fighting for that position, almost at the 1, with Chris Dunn, Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, Talon Horton-Tucker, and Keontae George. Those are the 5 guys really competing for that starting position at the 1. It felt like right before that he mentioned how Agbaji is someone he's going to rely on this season. It felt like, at least early on, the 2 spot is Agbaji's to lose going into the season.
I would love that. We were calling for Agbaji to play. He was getting G League minutes last year, right?
for you guys, Agbaji was one of my favorite players in last year's draft. He was somebody I wanted desperately out of that draft. I felt like he fit so well with our team. And as he develops, I think he's going to develop a little bit more of an offensive game. And even if he doesn't, he is already in the upper echelon of 3-and-D guys.
His baseline, his minimum that we think that he would hit fits into the modern NBA right now.
Yeah.
We know that you can put him in a corner and he'll shoot 39, 40% at the least. I think last year he was 45 from the corner threes. And then playing some defense. There are times that he also gets a little bit upright in kind of the naivete of being a rookie, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But the 3-and-D element is there at the very least. And my goodness, the guy sprints backwards probably like 30 miles an hour.
Dude,
the stuff that he does on the court
he's
is
got to
insane.
be the fastest player in the NBA.
I don't think I've ever seen anybody run backwards faster than him.
Just a freak.
Once they put him into the starting role, our transition defense numbers all of a sudden came back around to being, better than they were, which was a huge weakness for us in the first half of last season. So I would love to see him at the 2. I think that the dream scenario would be to get Keontae George starting.
I would start him immediately because if you feel like this is a team that just needs to develop and it's a championship level team, but Keontae's that missing piece, just start.
So you're talking about
with the freaking
invest time in him right now. Understand that will come with losses.
Yeah. Live with
the losses to have him get the bruises and kind of speed up his development.
Yeah. And I could see it with Will Hardy talking about that they don't know if Clarkson's going to start or not. He brought that.
He did bring that up.
They didn't ask him, where do you think Clarkson's going to be? He openly brought it up and said it depends on, who fits where, if we start Jordan Clarkson or not.
And you can make the argument that Jordan Clarkson is a better player right now, easily, right? I think he is.
Yeah.
Is he a starter? Is he a starting 1 or 2 on a championship level team? No.
Is he a better point guard right now?
I don't know. Coming into the season, I would have said yes, because I didn't think that Keontae was that good of a playmaker.
Right.
Now, he did that in Summer League, right? I mean, Summer League is what it is, but you look for the signs that will be indicators of where the growth can go. That's what Summer League is. It's kind of like an academy structure when you're looking at different sports. But so we saw the signs of his gravity from shooting, which was insane. His movement, his playmaking, the way that when he was on the court, every other player had more space and it just flowed better. These are things that I would not have said were a part of his game right now coming into the draft.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I was a little down on
that.
Keontae George coming in, as we're in the confession booth here. We saw that. I mean, I watched Keontae George back when he was at IMG, even, and everybody saw the flair and the moxie and the way that he carried himself, and just a killer that always wanted the final shot. We saw that in high school. That was amazing. But his decision-making, playmaking, I really didn't see that. Saw some real signs that were negative at Baylor. You can see now how you can rationalize how there were kind of some things going on there that maybe didn't fit into perfectly what he was hoping going in there. I think that he assumed that Flagler and Cryer, the other 2 really high-level guards at Baylor, were going to be gone.
Well, and he even talked about, it's something he's talked about before, but he talked about in his media day that, he's lighter than he was going into his college season last season because he had to play a different role.
They asked him to bulk up and play the 3. So there's some things going on, but he's showing some signs that I would have said, no, he doesn't have that, 3-4 months ago. And that's what's beautiful about watching young players develop. Man.
And I also
love that.
I think a lot of my frustrations with Jordan Clarkson being in the starting lineup is we're trying to make him someone he's just not. Jordan Clarkson was at his best when it was come off the bench and just freaking put the ball in the hoop. That's it. When you start trying to make him at 31, 32, completely change his style of game, he put up huge numbers, sure, but was it super beneficial for the team? Or is it more beneficial to let him just freaking cook off the bench?
Yeah. So I think he turns 31 this year during the season, I think. anyways, he's up there, past what's considered his prime. Now, this last year was his highest season of his entire career for assists per game, right?
Yes.
And I think it was 4 assists a game.
It was like
We-
4.5.
We did see a couple of games where he came out and was dishing the ball early.
Right.
Had like 3 or 4 assists in the first half, and our team was cooking because of it. But it was the anomaly. It was the exception of the rule. It's not basically who he was. And how many times did we see that there was an extra pass to a Markkanen, to a shooter that's somewhere that didn't happen because he's basically looking for his shots, and that's great if you're the flamethrower coming off the bench.
Well, and that's the thing though is, dude, you could see his confidence in even shooting towards the end of it just wasn't the same that it was the year before. And I think a big part of that is him trying to play outside of who he is. He's thinking too much. He's not just reacting now. He's now having to try to overthink every little thing that he does.
It'll be interesting to see how the preseason lineups start, the regular season. There's no question that you can picture a championship level team that has a player like him coming off the bench. There's no question.
And that's my thing.
And if he's on fire, let him finish the game.
Right. He doesn't have to start to be able to finish the game, but you have to be willing, if he's missed 10 shots in a row, to say, hey, you're not playing the end of this game. And I think Will Hardy can do that.
Yeah, have a little breather. Last year also kind of seemed a little bit like Will Hardy was trying to let everybody find their expressive selves and go way beyond. I mean, like the stuff that he had Ochai doing towards the end of the season. We won't see him do that when the season really matters, right? Or the things through Summer League. But kind of trying to find their limits and see what happens when they're allowed to skip freely in the mountain meadow.
Sure.
That's what it is. Pretty sure.
The problem also, though, is, so let's say they start Clarkson at the 2. Like midway through the season, and you've got Keontae at the 1 at that point. Or if you don't start Keontae George. So if you start Agbaji and you bring Keontae George off the bench, you're having Keontae George and Clarkson off the bench at the same time. And we both know their limits defensively.
That would be murder. We would get
killed.
Get destroyed. We would get killed.
So I feel like you need to stagger them. And whether that's starting Clarkson at the 1 next to Agbaji or starting Keontae at the 1, I'd rather Keontae. But if you're not going to start Keontae, I'd personally rather see Clarkson at that point just start at the 1.
I have seen some shows that have, podcasts, whatever, on YouTube that say that they want either Sexton or Clarkson on the court at all times. I'm one that I want Chris Dunn or Agbaji on the court at all times. I want one of those two. Just because
the defense that they bring is...
We've got to balance it out and have the defense and be able to cover. We know that we'll have the versatility and the shot blocking and off-ball shot blocking too in our bigs that will really make a difference. But if we try and play George and Clarkson together, that's pretty scary. There's just not a defensive base there yet. So
do we think with preseason, how much do you think we see Taylor Hendricks playing the 5?
Taylor Hendricks at the 5.
Do we try that early?
Man, I don't know if he gets much, really.
Or is he strictly John Collins' backup?
Because, we know Kessler's going to start. Will Hardy has talked about the John Collins and Olynyk together dynamic. So are we talking that he's the 3rd 5? I would expect him to get some kind of garbage minutes at the 4.
Yeah.
Depending on how preseason goes, maybe even a little touch at the 3 as well. But I think he's going to have kind of 10 to 15 minutes at the 4.
His minutes are going to be really hard to get to, too, because we play Markkanen a lot of times as our backup 4. And if we're trying to get 6 guards playing time, your rotation's probably going to be sliding Markkanen to the 4. For subs, whether it's Clarkson, Keontae George, or whatever. Agbaji slides to the 3. Markkanen slides to the 4.
Yeah, that's interesting. And if Taylor Hendricks gets in there minutes at the 4 while Markkanen's at the 3, the other team's going to try and throw their slower guy onto Taylor Hendricks because he hasn't proven himself that he can dribble really and attack off the dribble that well yet. They're going to try and go with a bigger size guard, kind of like how Sacramento does with Harrison Barnes, right? And so we like that.
Yeah.
I accept your terms. And they would have, like a Keegan Murray type who they would put out on Taylor Hendricks or John Collins when he's starting, that kind of stuff. So,
right.
And I don't know. I don't know at the 5 if the you don't have to have as much beef in the NBA now at the 5. I don't know if he'll be able to. There are certain lineups he'd really struggle with. Let's say that.
I think if he comes in, I think if I think they might try him at the 5 if they're looking at moving Olenek. I think they play him somewhat at the 5 if they're looking at Olenek being a possible trade piece and essentially planning on Hendricks playing the backup 5 role this season.